Yeah, now we will have a secondary spread, and we already have a couple of herds which have not used semen from horses at this time. So this virus is just a new virus out there circulating.
Hello, welcome to this podcast in the Meet the Experts series on swine health management in practice, brought to you by Boehringer Ingelheim. My name is Peter Best. Over time in the Meet the Experts series, you will find several podcasts on the subject of the porcine reproductive and respiratory syndrome, or PRRS. This podcast too is about PRRS, but it also happens to be a detective story. To take us through it, we're lucky to have the man who's led the team of veterinary detectives involved. He is Professor Lars Erik Larsen, now at the Department of Veterinary and Animal Sciences at the University of Copenhagen in Denmark, to head its research group for enzootic and zoonotic viruses in farm animals. Professor Larsen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure.
And I've called it a detective story. Would you agree with that description?
Yeah, it was very exciting movie.
Yeah, thanks. And have there been outcomes from it which you think raise practical issues for disease management in swine herds, or in swine sites, I should say?
Yeah, I think that it has created a debate about our use of vaccines, which and also awareness of the limitations and the risk. So I think that, but the bottom line is that it's also a lot of discussion about how to survey our boar stations. So I think that the major impact is now that the surveillance system in the negative boar stations have been improved.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning, please. We're talking about a PRRS event that has taken place in Denmark, evidently, and you referred to boar stations. How long ago did it start, this event?
Yeah, as outbreak of these kinds, they are always happening in the summer vacation period where nobody's in the lab. So this one started in end of July 2019. And it started as that this negative boar station was surveyed by 20 serum samples, taking 2 times a month. And it turned out that one of these samples was positive and for antibodies. And this happened on a Friday, which are also typical for outbreaks. And then, of course, this boar station was closed down, and new samples was taken on Sunday. And when we analyzed them on Monday, we found that 20 of these, 18 of 20 samples was positive. So then we went back and tested samples from July, and we saw that the sampling in the mid-July, and 14th of July, there was one boar which was positive for the virus.
And this boar station, it was PRRS negative, you say, and being monitored or surveillance twice a month. Was it in an area of Denmark with quite a high pig density?
Yeah, it is situated in the eastern part of Jutland, actually 5 kilometers from my birth home in Horsens. And it's a relatively dense area, and the biggest slaughtery in the northern part of Europe are also situated, I think it's 10 kilometers from there.
Just to state the obvious, to be clear, this boar station was supplying boar semen for insemination to commercial sow herds in the surrounding area, I assume.
All over Denmark.
All right. And in that surrounding area around this particular centre, is PRRS virus prevalent in those sow herds?
Yes, there's a lot of positive herds in the surrounding, yeah.
Yeah, and they vaccinate against PRRS routinely?
Some of them do, and some of the finisher sites are not vaccinating. And some of the finisher site we don't know the status on.
And was the event of a PRRS breakdown at a boar station, was that unusual, or has it happened before?
It's the first time in 17 years this has happened. And you can just, so it's not that usual, but it was not perfectly, it was not a big surprise that it would happen. So the boar station has quite a high biosecurity. However, there was no filtration on incoming air. So of course it was at risk.
Is that standard on boar stations in Denmark that you don't have air filtration?
Yeah, but now they have started establish them.
And what about the nature of the virus involved in this breakdown? I mean, what if I refer to the virus types as types 1 and 2? Which type was it at the boar station? I think both types were encountered in Denmark. Maybe that's correct?
Yes, we have both types. So maybe I can tell the story chronically because, so we got this positive sample in July, and then we run PCR on them, and they were highly positive. And then we did what we normally do is off-5 sequencing. And Lise Kvisgaard, my colleague, who is normally in charge of our sequencing, was of course on vacation in Spain. So my PhD student Pia with Hansen was helping me out with the sequencing. Yeah, so first we did the sequencing of 5, and we did that right away. And the result of that was very good for us because it looked like it was a vaccine virus. So it was more than 99% identical to the Amavax strain, which is in the uni strain vaccine. So based on OF5, we were confident that this was a vaccine strain, and then by that hoping that the excretion in the semen has not been too high. But then we should have stopped, because then there will not have been all this panic. But we continued and did the full genome sequencing, and then it turned out that when we did the full genome, that it fit quite well when we looked at OF5, OF4, OF6, and 7, and it was perfectly matched with the Unison strain. But the OF3 was a bit weird because it was kind of a mixture. And then when we went to OF2 and also OF1, then the similarity to the vaccine strain dropped to 90%. And then we thought, okay, yes, sorry.
No, it's all right. Just to, so I understand you, you thought it was this vaccine strain, and that was 100% when you did a partial sequencing. When you did a full genome sequencing, you saw that it was not that per se. No.
So it turned out that so we thought this might be a reassorted virus. So we took off 2 and off 1, and then did what we normally do, a blast, which are a search in the gene bank where all public available PRRS sequences are available. So we searched in there, but still the closest match was only 90% identical. So it was not this strain. So at that time, we wrote a report to the industry and saying that this is a reassortment between the vaccine strain and an unknown wild type. But then Lise got home from vacation, and she looked at this blast, and actually one of the big best hit in the blast was called 96198. And because we're doing a lot of cooperation with Hans Neuwig in Belgium, she could recognize that this is from Belgium, and it looked like this strain which are in Zoetis vaccine. And then she went in GeneBank and searched for this name of the strain which are in Zoetis PRRS strain. And then we found a sequence, and then we put in this into our phylogenetic tree, and bingo, it was 99.5% identical to this strain. And this was a big surprise, but because it tells us that there's a lot of sequences in GeneBank which are not popping up when you do a blast research. And I think that all researchers doing phylogeny in viruses and also other stuff are a bit surprised about this. So therefore it turned out so we contacted Zoetis and they provided us with a full gene sequencing. And then we could do a recombination analysis, and it proved this was a reassortment between two vaccine strains, the unit strain and the Suvaxyn vaccine.
And were these vaccines in use in Denmark?
Yeah, it was the next question is that where did this happen? And then the Suvaxyn vaccine, in Denmark we have a database for all vaccines and medicine sold. So you can basically go in and look up how many hertz that has been used as vaccine. And the Suvaxyn vaccine was coming quite late at the market. So it has only been used in 3 hertz in Denmark. Actually, it has been sold in four different to 4 different veterinarians, but one of them was ourselves because we bought it to sequence it. So it was only used for 3 hertz, and 2 of them were situated in northern part of Jutland, and the last one was situated 5 kilometers from Labor station. But actually, it didn't appear in the register because it was gone out of business 2 months before, so it has been removed. So in the first place, we couldn't find it. But then we succeeded in finding it. And then we asked the veterinarians to take samples from this herd. And this herd was broke, but all the animals has been transferred to another site. So we went out there and took a lot of samples and found 3 different viruses there. We found the Suvaxyn virus, we found the Unistrain virus, and the last we sequenced was the recombination strain. So all these 3 viruses were circulating. And indeed, when we looked, then both vaccine had been used, not at the same time, but first the Unistrain had been used, and then they shifted to Suvaxyn. Yeah, and
so they used 2 vaccines, 2 different vaccines within what, a 12-month period or less?
Yes.
I see. And have there been reports from elsewhere of 2 different vaccines being used and recombining, and anything similar from the literature?
Yeah, there's a report from France where they had a recombination between also Unistrain and Porcellus in one herd. But it's the only example for PRRS-1 vaccines that I'm aware of. That there is other reports also from Hungary and China that one vaccine are recombining with a field type virus, but the only report from 2 PRRS-1 vaccines are recombining is from France.
So this detective story in itself has raised some things about the information that's available to you as investigators. And you said about the gene bank, you said you were lucky that Dr. Is it Lisa Kviesgaard, who you mentioned, was
Yeah.
in touch with other researchers, and you identified the second element through that. So it tells you something about the perhaps the information available to you as detectives wasn't just 100%, that you needed to have access to more information than was available.
Yeah, but this is just showing that it's really important that we are doing this sequencing. So, and it also tells us that we cannot use OF5 alone. Not.
It can't just be on the open reading frame 5. It's got to be full genome. Huh?
Yeah, it has. Of course, you can use OF5 for other things, but not for this disease tracking. And it also tells me that I think that there's so many requirements. It's so expensive for the companies to get these vaccines on the market. And there's no requirement yet that you have to publish the sequence of this virus. And I think that it should be a request that companies are doing it. And
Sure.
But basically, especially for the modified live vaccine, they should do it because we can just buy the bottle and do it ourselves. So I think that. So and then we have contacted this organization who is running this database and told them about this blast problem, but we haven't got any response. So of course, yeah, we are 100% dependent on people sharing sequences to be able to do these disease tracking. So and in this, we were quite lucky. We could have been missing this strain, also because the vaccine was not being used in Denmark, so we were not focused on that. It was only because Lisa has a good memory.
And the virus was in semen from this boar center, went out to production herds. You were able to identify quite a number of herds that had received the virus or became infected with this same virus by this means, did you?
Yeah, by combining the data we had, we estimated that this has happened in the beginning of July. So meaning that semen has been sent out almost for 4 weeks or 3 weeks at least. So at least 400 herds had received semen. And of these, then there was 70 sow herds. And there was a survey so the industry went out to have a follow-up in these herds. And until now, I think it's 43 of them has been positive of the sow and the herds. But the production herds, we don't know because they can send samples to whatever. So, but
yeah,
we
I'm
expect,
sure.
We expect a lot of the production herds also has been infected by semen.
Yes. And as well as the semen, they could presumably infect each other through their proximity. If they were very close to one another, they could be also a source of infection.
Yeah, now we will have a secondary spread, and we already have a couple of herds which have not used semen from horses at this time. So this virus is just a new virus out there circulating. So it will spread horizontally also.
Was the result of the recombination of these two vaccine viruses, was it a relatively stable virus in your view that seemed to be highly transmissible and pathogenic in infected herds?
Yeah, it seems to be stable. So we passed it for 3 passages, but now we are preparing stocks for experimental infections. So we are in passage 5 or something, and it's quite stable. And we keep on finding this in new herds also. So I think that this virus is really competitive, and it's spreading like hell. And actually, we have done in cooperation with Seges, who is the industry corporation here in Denmark, and they have done a survey or got production data from 18 herds, where they compare the infected herds, where they compare the production data 7 months before with 5 months after receiving semen, and the impact there is 2 to 7 fewer pigs per liter weaned. So it accounts for maybe 200 million Danish crowns, which are 30-40 million euro. And yes. At this time, for the first time in many years, the prices was up, and people has already ordered their new Mercedes. So it was really bad timing.
Yeah, the worst possible time. The effects on these herds, this was despite the fact, I assume, that some herds were using what we might call parent vaccine virus strains in their herd vaccination.
Yeah, so these herds which got infected here, all of them but 2 controlled the infection by max vaccination, and most of them used the unistrain virus because it was the best match in the external part of the virus. But despite this max vaccination, then the losses are as described here. But they might have been worse if they didn't go in and did the mass vaccination after the outbreak. So it was after the outbreak, not before the outbreak.
Yeah. So there's still issues on vaccination to be resolved as far as this new virus is concerned.
Yeah, but I think but the discussion now, the discussion has been mixed in Denmark. So you're mixing things up, because I think that we have 2 challenges. The one thing is that the weak spot in PRRS control is when you take things into the herd out from outside. So when you have to take in new gilts and when you have to take in semen. And this just demonstrates that semen is really a risk factor, but there's no way around it. You need to supply semen to the herds, but these losses are so big that of course we have to do much better surveillance at the boar stations. If we have done at this boar station PCR on these 20 samples, we could do it in pools. It would have cost €70 to do it. It will have saved 200 herds so it will have saved us a lot of money. So better surveillance, yes.
Better surveillance, certainly. More frequent surveillance. You said it twice a month, didn't you?
No, now we're doing it once a week, and we are doing it with PCR and bioserology.
So as frequent as you can possibly do it, and with the most resources that you can do. And what about the vaccination? Would we assume...
What I started to say is that 2 situations here has been mixed up. So this big outbreak was due to infection in a boar station. And this could have happened with a wild type strain. It has nothing to do with the recombination. It's just coincident that this strain is a recombinant virus. It could have been that this recombinant, if it didn't enter this boar station, we could have found it in our normal surveillance, and everybody would have said, okay, it's just one herd, it's a recombination. But here, all these losses are, at least in the leg press, being related to the virus being a recombinant virus. And this is not true. This could also have happened with a normal wild type strain. So we have 2 situations here. One is the use of vaccines and the risk of a recombination. The other thing is the boar station issues. And these 2 should be discussed separately. It's not the same discussion. So one is to take care of the boar station to secure surveillance, etc., avoiding spread of viruses. And then we have the discussion about what should we do about reassortment? What should we do about reassortment between vaccines and wild types and among vaccines? But it has nothing to do with this outbreak. So I prefer and try to tell people we have two different situations here, and we should have two different discussions.
In the detective story, the nature of the virus meant there was probably a more detailed investigation after the event that might have happened otherwise, I would guess. But you said 17 years since the last breakdown of a PRRS-negative boar station, so the surveillance and biosecurity seem to have done a good job. Would the nature of this virus have had any effect at all on getting through those measures where previously other virus types had not done so?
I don't think so. So what we have been looking is that has there been any break in biosecurity at this farm? Has anybody been working on other farms, etc.? And I don't know. It has not been. I've not been involved in this, but they tell us that there's no break. But this herd where we found the virus is situated 6 kilometers from this herd, and it's in the western direction. And when we looked at the temperature and the wind direction during July, it was low. It was from west, and the temperature was 15 degrees. And under these circumstances, some groups in US have estimated that the half-life of living PRRS in air is 80 minutes, and it takes 7 minutes for aerosols to get from this herd to the boar station. And so we are pretty sure that, as PH just mentioned, that we have the smoking gun. We're pretty sure it's airborne spread from this this herd. But we cannot prove it more.
But as a detective story, that's a pretty neat piece of investigation, I think. And thank you for sharing that with us and your views on the outcomes from it, Professor Larsen. I think we should end our podcast then. So can I just say thank you to Professor Lars Erik Larsen of the University of Copenhagen in Denmark, and also to you, our listeners, for joining us for this podcast in the Meet the Expert series. Please stay tuned. There will be more podcasts coming. Thank you, Professor Larsen. Goodbye.